Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
The place began to fill up with the post-work crowd. The noise level rose as people crowded around the bar, shouting out drink orders. In a back booth, a man and a woman sat across from each other, sipping their second, or was it third martini. Nina Romano, with her dark hair and striking appearance in her early 40s, had a bitter look on her face as she watched the front door. "Damn that woman," she muttered under her breath. "Here she comes, waltzing in with her husband in tow. Mrs. Goody Two-Shoes," she sneered. Mark Sutton, her drinking companion, raised an eyebrow and glanced toward the front of the room. "You mean Emma Caldwell? What do you have against her?" he asked, taking a sip of his drink. Nina looked up at the tall, dark-haired man and hissed, "She's the one who almost destroyed my marriage. I'm sure she got word to Jake about my affair, and the scumsucker threatened to divorce me." The venom in her voice was palpable. Mark chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Nina, why blame her? If you hadn't cheated, you wouldn't be in this mess. You were pretty obvious about it." Nina pouted, frustrated. "It's easy for you to say, Mark. I know you sleep around on Hannah and get away with it." "That's because I'm careful," Mark replied smoothly. "The only mistake I made was letting it slip to you, so you'd better keep quiet about it. Besides, you don't interact with Emma much. She's in human resources and you're in graphics. Just let it go." He raised his glass to his lips and finished it off. Nina's lips tightened into a thin line. "Yeah, and now they just got a promotion. She's assistant director of human resources. She's got to be sleeping with Darren Cooper." Mark laughed again. "Calm down, Nina. Not everyone is screwing around, you know. I at least have a good reason. My wife is almost never home, and there's a ton of kitty around when I'm on the road. Besides, I wouldn't be surprised if she's getting her share when she has to travel for a conference." Nina stared at him. "You mean you don't care if she cheats on you? Damn, I should have married you." "Our marriage is an intelligent union, Nina. It's kind of like an open marriage but with no discussion. If we don't talk about it, it's not happening, and I'm happy with that. Hannah needs a little release. She works hard, and I don't begrudge her that." "What the hell? It's only sex," chuckled Mark. Nina just shook her head. "I wish I felt that way. It's just that he's so bad in bed." "Oh, poor Nina." Mark smirked. "What, his tool is too little?" Nina just grimaced. "You know better than that, Mark. Don't go believing all that about size. It really isn't all that important. Jake is quite adequate. It's just that he's a wham-bam thank you ma'am kind of guy. He doesn't give a damn about me. Most of the time, I never even have a climax with him. I don't know why I love the jackass." She paused briefly. "Anyway, I just wish I could get back at the—" she muttered as she glared across the room. Mark followed her gaze, his mouth tightening. "You're not the only one, Nina. You know that Caldwell just picked up the Henderson account. One that should have gone to me. The scumsucker will now be pulling in big bucks. Well into six figures. He's got to be kissing someone's butt. Plus, he's screwing one sexy. I tried to come on to Emma at the last company get-together, and she almost went ballistic. She's got one hell of a temper," he concluded bitterly. It was now Nina's turn to laugh. "I thought that you were buddies with Eric. You play golf with him and two other guys every weekend." "Yeah, but we're not close. The golf is just a game of convenience. They needed a fourth, and Eric knew that I'm a scratch player, so he asked me to join the group. He's too perfect, you know, perfect job, perfect wife, perfect life. He's even obsessive about exercising. You know, he wants a perfect body. He's also nuts about his wife. He even has a tattoo of a lily on his butt." Nina's eyes widened. "You've got to be kidding. Perfect Eric has a tattoo? That's a riot. I bet that Emma talked him into that. Kind of like putting a brand on him." She laughed. "Yeah, I first saw it when we all showered after a golf game. He was showing it off, you know, proud of it." Mark shook his head in disgust. Nina's eyes had narrowed, and she was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "You know, Mark, I have an idea how we can really screw them up. Really screw up their perfect lives. Now just be quiet and listen. Emma and Eric Caldwell had it all. Even those who weren't overly fond of the couple had to admit that they were perfect for each other. They had met in college, and after their first kiss, they knew that they were meant to be together forever. After graduation, Eric gained employment with the largest advertising agency on the West Coast. He had majored in management and marketing in college and was primed to join the sales staff as an account executive. It wasn't entirely a coincidence that Emma had been offered a position in the same company, in their human resources department. The fact that her father was a director on the board didn't exactly hamper their chances for employment there. 7 months after joining the company, they married. It was a blowout affair with a guest list straight out of San Diego's social registry. Eric's older brother, Matthew, a lieutenant in the local police force, acted as his best man, and Emma's older sister, Rachel, was the matron of honor. After the honeymoon, they settled into a modest 5-bedroom, 4-bath cottage in Brentwood, with a 3-car garage, a swimming pool, and a single tennis court. It would have been pretentious to have put in a double court. After all, they were just starting out. They were also alike in that they were both gorgeous physical specimens. Eric was dark-haired, tall, and had a beautifully sculpted body. Emma was another story. It appeared as if she had stepped out of the pages of a fashion magazine. A very expensive fashion magazine. She was blonde, blue-eyed, and above average height, with a slender, willowy figure that belied the rather impressive body that strained whatever garment she happened to have on. While their love for each other was obvious, their relationship could only be described as tumultuous. While Eric was a laid-back, easygoing sort, Emma was another story. While innately kind and giving, she did have a fiery personality. Emma was fortunate in that her close friends were used to her outbursts and had learned to accept, or at least tolerate them. Emma was also smart enough to recognize the danger inherent in a loose cannon and made sure that she was nothing but professional at her job. Unfortunately, Eric never knew from day to day just what he would find at home. Would it be the kind and loving wife he adored, or would he have to face a raging harpy? Luckily, her bad days did not occur too often, but every few weeks, he knew that there would be trouble. It seemed that it didn't take much to set Emma off. The problem was that he never knew when that would happen. A minor problem that she would just shrug off most days would result in an emotional storm another time. It was like living with an active volcano, never being sure when the eruption would come. It was that temper that fueled the calamity that befell them. A cloudy and blustery Friday night a few weeks later saw Mark Sutton in Nina Romano's office at work, with her drawing material strewn over her table and desk. "Okay, Mark, I have to be near the phone. I told Jake that I had some work to clear up, and he expects me to be here. He's called me twice already. He doesn't trust anything I tell him." Mark laughed as he doodled on the drawing pad that Emma had presented to him. "Poor Jake. He's a lawyer but so easy to fool. You know that he's nuts about you, Nina. That's why he's still with you. Anyway, here's the drawing." Nina's mouth twisted with disgust as she viewed Mark's drawing. "Damn it, Mark. You can't draw worth a shit," she complained. "That's the lousiest sketch I've ever seen. What do you want from me, Nina?" "I can't draw." "Big deal. This whole thing is your idea, so come up with another solution to my lousy drawing," answered Mark crossly. Wait, Nina replied excitedly. "Let me get some clip art down. I know that we have a book of flowers." Nina started to rummage through the volumes on a back shelf of her office. "Here it is. Let me leaf through this. Aha! Here we go. A lily. Now, is this like the one on Eric's butt?" "Bingo, you've got it. That's exactly like it. Except his is in color, not black and white." "Not to worry, sweetie. I'll do the color. Just give me the size of that tattoo. As close as you can, and we'll get started," smiled Nina. 1 inch. Nina, Eric even told us how big it was. He would brag, 1 inch, guys. I've got a 1 inch lily right here. And then he'd laugh, the dumb schmuck. Mark told her. "Okay, 1 inch, repeated Nina. "Now get your pants and shorts off, and let me get started. I've got all the materials right here." With that, Mark did as he was told and removed his slacks and undershorts, standing there without a trace of embarrassment. Turn around, Mark. I'm not going to draw on your tool, laughed Nina. Mark had a small smile on his face. We're going to do more than just draw, Nina. Once the drawing on my butt is finished, we start taking pictures. That's why the camera is perched there on the tripod. Where's the remote, by the way? Yeah, I know. That's the deal, you get to screw me and we'll get some good shots. But from the waist down, Emma Caldwell is going to get proof that her perfect hubby is screwing around on her. It's a good thing that you kind of look like Eric. At least, I hope, below the waist. Nina chuckled. Oh, the remote's on the arm of the couch. That's where the action's going to take place. Mused Mark. Now, how do you know what Caldwell looks like below the waist, Nina? Have you been buffing him? Nina laughed despite herself. Keep quiet, Mark, and let me finish. This won't take too long, she said as she bent to the task. True to her word, the drawing was finished fairly quickly, and Mark looked at his rear in the mirror Nina provided. Perfect, Nina. It's just as I remember it. Look, we won't make the pictures too crystal clear, kind of soft focus. That'll take care of any slight difference there might be. Mark slowly licked his lips and began unbuttoning his shirt, the last piece of clothing he had on. Then he nodded toward Nina. All right, Cupcake. Let's get this started. Mark watched attentively as Nina took off her blouse and skirt. A moment later, she stood before him, fully exposed. Despite her nudity, Nina exuded confidence. Her figure was slim and graceful, her waist smooth with a gentle curve in her lower abdomen that added a hint of elegance. Mark's eyes moved downward, observing her well-maintained appearance. Okay, Nina, Mark said. Let's begin. We'll let the camera run on automatic for a bit, then edit the photo to showcase only what we want. The final image will feature Caldwell's silhouette with a lily on his back, as he's immersed in a scene that certainly isn't blonde. He chuckled. It was a cool evening, despite the fact that the calendar indicated that spring had finally arrived. Eric Caldwell parked his car in the garage and trudged wearily into the house. He had been working the Lancaster account for weeks, trying to overcome each objection Old Man Lancaster had fired at their ad presentation. Tonight had been just one in a prolonged series of meetings trying to placate the old scumsucker. Eric had no inkling as to what was to greet him when he walked into his sanctuary. He dropped his briefcase on the chair in the spacious foyer, stripped off his suit jacket and tie, both of which he draped over his arm. Walking into the living room, he saw Emma standing there, glaring at him. Oh, he thought, what the hell has set her off this time? Eric usually shrugged off Emma's tantrums, but tonight he was just too beat to put up with any. He was startled, though, when she beat him to the verbal draw. You rotten, cheating son of a bitch, she hissed, spittle flying from her mouth. My faithful, adoring husband is nothing but another prick who thinks with his tool. Oh, you poor, hard-working, lying scumsucker. Late-night meetings, huh? Late-night screwing is more like it, you prick. Emma had hit her stride. She hurled invective after invective at Eric, who just stood there, dumbfounded at the sight of his wife spitting and hissing like a viper about to strike at his jugular. She slowly approached him, still hurling verbal barbs. She was white with anger, and Eric was just barely able to grab her hand as it came flying up to his face. His patience was worn thin, and he clasped her hand with some force, causing her to gasp in pain. Let go of my hand, you son of a bitch, she spat as she attempted to claw him with her other hand. Eric's lips curled in disgust as he pushed her onto the sofa. Shut up, he roared. I've had it. I've had it with your irrational, idiotic outbursts. I don't know what set you off this time, but it's the last time. You're acting like a spoiled child. One day you'll grow up and learn to comport yourself with some dignity and maturity. Eric's words stung Emma, and she cowered, stunned by his vehemence. He sat down close to her and lowered his voice. Emma, listen to me, please. I don't know where you got this ridiculous notion, but please let me assure you that I have never, repeat, never, cheated on you. The thought has never even entered my mind. His voice took on a pleading tone. Emma, I love you. I've always loved you. The thought of betraying you would kill me. Please, Emma. Please believe me. Emma's eyes softened for a moment, then quickly hardened again. This time, her voice was calm and controlled. "Screw you, Eric. You're a pretty good liar, but I know that you're a cheat and an adulterer, so you can quit trying to be the injured party. I saw the proof. You're going to crawl through hell before I forgive you." Eric sighed and stood up. He looked down at his wife and shook his head slowly. "Have it your way, Emma, but I'm not going to play your game. I don't know what caused this sudden change in you, but you can act the martyr on your own. In the meantime, I'm leaving. Deal with your thoughts for a bit. I might come back or I might not. Think about that for a while." "Forget about coming back," Emma snarled. "Go screw your girlfriends." Her voice dropped, and if Eric had looked back, he would have seen the tears flowing down her cheeks. "They can have you," her voice cracked as he stalked out of the house. The next few days were agonizing for both Emma and Eric. Eric had made good on his threat about leaving and had rented a suite at the Carlton, a local extended-stay hotel not far from work. He had made sure that Emma was at work when he came home and packed most of his clothing and personal effects. They were both subdued and tense at work, which was quickly noted by their coworkers, who avoided them whenever possible. Fortunately, Eric and Emma worked on different floors, and it was not difficult for them to avoid each other. Things came to a head a few days later. Eric was seated at his desk, trying to develop a proposal, when his phone rang. "Eric, this is Richard. Are you busy?" a deep, authoritative voice asked. Eric blinked, surprised to hear from his father-in-law. He immediately thought that Emma had brought out the big guns, getting her father to threaten him with dismissal, then smiled as he realized that would be the last thing that Richard would do. His respect for the man knew no bounds. Richard Bender was a true gentleman with a huge amount of integrity. "Richard, it's nice hearing from you." "No, I'm not busy. What do you have in mind?" asked Eric. "Good. Then do me a favor, son. It's almost lunchtime. Why not pop out and join me for a bite at the Oak Ridge Club? It's not far and you wouldn't be too late getting back. It's time that we had a chat. Something that we should have had a while ago." It was a short time later that saw Eric Caldwell seated with his father-in-law in a small dining room at a private and very exclusive Beverly Hills club. They had greeted each other in a warm and friendly manner and enjoyed their lunch along with a bottle of good California wine. Eric declined the offer of a cigar but rose and followed Richard into an adjoining study. Richard motioned for Eric to have a seat and then closed the door firmly behind him. Richard was obviously uncomfortable, and Eric watched as the tall, graying man paced a bit before seating himself also. "Okay, son. I'm sure that you're astute enough to realize the purpose of this little meeting. Emma has been raving and ranting about your so-called adultery, and her mother has been commiserating with her, something that she has done for ages. Helen has always been terrified by Emma's temper, and so my daughter has never grown to realize that temper tantrums are for children, not adults." Richard sighed ruefully. "I suppose that it's partly my fault also. You know that Emma is our youngest child, and I guess that I've given in to her more than I should have. But this notion of hers is ludicrous, despite what she calls the so-called proof of her claim. I told her that I just do not believe her accusations. I know you, Eric, and I know that infidelity is just not part of your character. So, what the hell is going on, son?" Eric leaned back in his chair and smiled wryly. "You know, Richard, you're my father-in-law, my wife's father, and yet you believe in me and are certain that I wouldn't betray my marriage. Isn't that sadly ironic? You will not believe that I cheated, yet my sweet, loving, trusting wife does. What does that tell you about the kind of relationship Emma and I have? I opened my heart to her, Richard. I pleaded with her. I swore I had never betrayed her, and she just spat at me and cursed me. The events of the past few days have opened my eyes. I saw, perhaps for the first time, just what kind of person Emma really is. I truly believe that Emma may be schizophrenic, Richard. She seems to be two different people, and I have been going nuts trying to figure out who she is at any given time. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde situation." Eric had to stop, his eyes filling with tears. Richard felt his heart go out to this man, who was like a son to him. He started to speak, but Eric put up his hand. "Richard, most of the time Emma is as sweet and kind as anyone I know, but there are times, at least every few weeks or so, when she goes nuts. Most of the time, her anger is not directed at me. Thank goodness. But she does find a target, and I have to wait until she regains her mental equilibrium. I'm tired, Richard. I'm really tired. It's like living with a time bomb, and I'm tired of it. I love Emma. I really do. But this little blow-up is the final straw. I can't live with her, Richard. I'm truly sorry, but I just can't live like this. Eric took a deep breath and lowered his eyes. He truly hated to wound this decent man. I've decided to divorce her, Richard. I've given this a lot of thought, and I see no other solution. I love her, but I'm going to divorce her. Richard Bender paled as he heard Eric's plan. He knew that this would devastate Emma, despite her anger at what she perceived as her husband's betrayal. His mind worked quickly, and in seconds he had come up with a desperate plan. Eric, please hear me out, just for a moment or so. I have a suggestion that may have some value. Let me draw up a notice of intent to divorce for you and have it served on Emma. It's a document declaring that unless Emma agrees to counseling or couples mediation, you will file for divorce. It's not as final as divorce papers, and it can give both of you a chance to cool down. Please, Eric, at least think about my suggestion, pleaded Richard. Eric sat quietly for a moment before speaking. Okay, Richard, let me think about this for a day or two. I have to tell you that I have my doubts. Emma is so sure that I cheated that she'll probably go bonkers when she sees that. But let me get back to you. I promise I'll let you know soon. And with that, the two men shook hands and parted. Nina Romano grinned at Mark Sutton as he sat nude on her office sofa, fully excited. Boy, do you take pride in that extra inch. Beating Jake by a little bit must feel good, doesn't it? Teased Nina, who had taken off her clothes. Hey, don't downplay that extra inch. And this moment is worth embracing. Come on, Nina. Let's enjoy this together. Geez, Mark, aren't you the romantic one? No sweet words or expressions of love? She joked as she removed her panties and approached him. Nina was excited and responsive. Ah, she sighed. If only Jake could make me feel this way. But his priorities lie with golf, she murmured as she rose and lowered herself again onto Mark's firm presence. Thank goodness for golf and Friday nights. This is amazing, Mark, Nina said softly. Your husband plays golf while we get to share moments in your office. Seems fair to me, she laughed. Mark, she breathed. You're an excited woman's dream. Jake would have finished in around 5 seconds, and you're still as stiff as a steel rod. Let's see what we can do about that. Mark laughed, and then he screwed her. They both lay together, exhausted, on the sofa. Nina turned to Mark and whispered, That was incredible. I hope you had your energy this morning because I'm not finished. Far from it. By the way, did you show that photo to Emma Caldwell yet? Mark let out a quiet chuckle. Yeah. I waited until she was alone in her office. Not many people around. I walked in and told her a story. One where I didn't think someone like her deserved to be treated the way Eric was treating her. I asked her to promise to stay completely out of it, and then I showed her the photo. Mark paused and smiled again. At first, I thought she was going to throw a fit, but she just turned to me and asked if she could have the photo. I told her no, that this was totally confidential, but if she really needed it in the future to let me know, and I would see if I could give it to her. I could see the fire in her eyes, so I got out of there as soon as I could. Nina, that picture was perfect. We didn't even need just a waist-down shot. With the soft focus and from the back, it sure did look like Eric. And with that tattoo on his butt, there was little doubt. Nina had a self-satisfied smile on her face. Good, good, she said softly. There goes that perfect marriage. Let her suffer. Emma, you'd better calm down. Losing control of yourself isn't going to help the situation, counseled Rachel, Emma's sister. They were seated in Rachel's kitchen, a half-empty coffee cup in front of each sister. Rachel again glanced out of the window, watching her 2 children playing on the back lawn. Emma sighed and put her cup down. I know, right, Rachel? But I'm still so steamed. The scumsucker cheated. He was unfaithful, and he has the balls to tell me he loves me and that he never betrayed me. I saw the proof, Rachel. I saw a photo of him screwing a dark-haired whore. I don't know what to do. I'm really tempted to just divorce Eric. I can't trust him anymore. I'll never be able to trust him. Her voice broke as her eyes filled with tears. Rachel just shook her head, truly puzzled. I'm sorry, honey. I really am. It's just so hard to believe. Not Eric. Anyone but Eric. I know that he adores you. My God. It's plastered all over his face every time he looks at you. There's something awfully strange about this whole situation, Emma. No, don't get pissed at me. She stopped Emma as she was about to interrupt her. I really wish that you would sit down with Eric and just talk with him. And talk without losing your temper. What's there to talk about, Rachel? Replied Emma glumly. I tell him that I know he cheated on me, and he replies again and again that he never has. He lies like a rug. Rachel. He won't admit it. You know how stubborn he can be. I know he cheated, and he won't admit it. Rachel's robe had slipped open slightly, and Emma noticed that Rachel seemed a little disheveled. It was clear she had hurried to the door without much thought. When Rachel absent-mindedly adjusted her robe and scratched her knee, exposing part of her leg, Emma felt awkward for arriving unannounced. I'm sorry, Rachel. I didn't mean to barge in like this, Emma stammered, blushing. I'll come back another time if you're busy. Rachel blinked at her sister's nervousness, then quickly realized her appearance might seem a bit unkempt. She gave a light laugh and said, It's okay, Emma. I was just caught up in something. Sit down, make yourself comfortable. Let me freshen up, and I'll be right back. Emma wandered into the living room as Rachel went upstairs. She looked wistfully at a picture of Eric and herself that Rachel had on an end table. It was a shot of the two of them during their honeymoon. She wondered if they would ever again be that happy. Emma then wandered into the kitchen, where she poured herself another cup of coffee. Sitting at the table, she again tried to make sense of why Eric was so insistent that she was wrong. Damn, she saw the proof. He should be begging for forgiveness. Emma was startled as the doorbell chimed. Knowing that Rachel and Don were upstairs, she went to the door and was greeted by a short, rotund man who asked if she was Emma Caldwell. Yes, I'm Emma Caldwell. Who are you? She replied, handing her a folded document. The man told her that she had been served, turned, and walked away. Emma stood in amazement, looking at his retreating back and then at the paper in her hand in puzzlement. Moments later, as Rachel was descending the staircase, she stopped in shock as she heard Emma shrieking, That son of a bitch! That dirty, rotten scumsucker! I'll see him in hell first. I'll cut his balls off. That rotten prick! He hasn't seen anything yet. I'll castrate him. Rachel rushed into the living room and found a wild-eyed, disheveled Emma pacing the floor and spitting curses at her absent husband. She whirled on Rachel and thrust the paper at her. Look at this. Look what that scumsucker had the gall to do. He had me served with this. This piece of shit called a... What the hell is it called? She looked at it again before surrendering it to her sister. A notice of intent to divorce, she sputtered. He threatens to divorce me unless I go into counseling? She stammered incredulously. He screws around and wants me to go into counseling? The scumsucker. Oh, the unmitigated gall. I just can't believe the unmitigated gall. Emma. Rachel had to raise her voice so as to be heard over Emma's ranting. Just calm down now. Emma. Calm down, Rachel commanded. Okay, Rachel. Emma had regained control, although her face was still red with rage. She bit her lip and flopped down on the sofa, and Rachel saw that she was still trembling with anger. Rachel was reading the document that Emma had thrust at her. I don't understand. Why would Eric send you this? It just doesn't make sense, sis. Think about it. Eric isn't devious. You know that. What you see is what you get with him. Why on earth would he want you to go into counseling if he screwed up? Rachel sat next to her sister and just looked puzzled. Rachel knew Emma well and, at this point, was very suspicious of Emma's claim. She also knew Eric, and she was pretty well convinced that Eric wouldn't cheat on Emma. If Emma did indeed have proof of his infidelity, then something strange must have caused Eric to lose control. And if he did, Rachel was certain Eric wouldn't be sending Emma such an ultimatum. That was totally out of character. Emma had regained a modicum of control. Her facial flush had been replaced by a paleness that was startling by comparison. Her lips had tightened, and she spoke calmly, her voice almost emotionless. "That's it, Rachel. This is over the top. I'm beginning to hate him and what he's been doing to me. It's obvious that he doesn't love me anymore. And I'm not even sure of my own feelings right now." Tears had started to form in Emma's eyes. "I'm going to start divorce proceedings, Rachel. This marriage is over." Her voice broke, and she put her hands over her face, allowing the tears to come. It was a warm evening, and the air was filled with the smells of spring. Lawns that had been mowed that day still gave off their fragrance, and the trees had blossomed with new growth. It was a season filled with the promise of new life. But Eric Caldwell was oblivious to all of that. He was seated in his brother's living room, cradling a glass of Macallan in his palms. Matthew and his wife, Sophie, sat across from him on the couch, both their eyes filled with concern. Matthew finally broke the awkward silence. "Eric, it was nice having you for dinner, but that's not the real reason you called, is it?" Eric sighed wearily and nodded. "Yeah, you're right, Matthew." He then smiled awkwardly. "You could always read me. Not much I can hide from you. By the way, Sophie, dinner was delicious. Thanks again." Sophie nodded, her smile tentative, but the look of concern returned quickly. "Oh, Eric, this whole situation is so tragic. I know that you love Emma and that she adores you. What on earth is going on? This is so crazy." Eric was quiet for a moment, then began to speak, but in a voice so low that his hosts had to strain to listen. "I know, Sophie, it is crazy, but I've had time to think. We all know how Emma is. She blows up easily, but she usually calms down quickly enough. Everyone knows that she doesn't carry a grudge." He sat quietly for another moment, obviously gathering his thoughts. "Something's going on. Something completely out of the ordinary. I lost my temper at Emma, at her ridiculous accusation. I was royally pissed that she would even dream that I would cheat on her. But she continues to insist that she's right, that she has seen the proof. Emma's excitable, but she's not nuts. And she's not stupid." Eric paused, was pensive for another moment, then continued. "Matthew, Sophie," he looked up at them, "I think somebody's screwing with us. I'm not being paranoid, but I really think that somebody is trying to screw up my marriage." Eric grimaced and quickly apologized to Sophie. "Sorry, Sophie. Please excuse my language." Sophie waved her hand dismissively. Matthew sat, nodding, a satisfied look on his face. "I think you're right, Eric. I've been thinking along those exact lines. I can't think of any other explanation for Emma's behavior. You may be onto something. Something really stinks here. I think it's time to be proactive." "You're right, Matthew," replied Eric. "I think it's time for me to sit down and have a serious conversation with Emma, something I've been foolishly avoiding." Emma stood in the shower, absently swiping the soapy washcloth over her skin. She was deep in thought, her innate common sense finally starting to kick in. She really had had no opportunity for a reasoned, sensible discussion with herself since that fateful day when she had been shown that horrible picture. Since then, a whirlwind of emotions, from anger to grief, had swept her along. Now, many of the things that Rachel had pointed out were awakening her and causing her to reconsider what was happening. Eric's infidelity, she finally realized, was so out of character that there had to be another explanation for that photograph. Oh, that photo. That horrible photo, she thought. Eric's tattoo was pictured so prominently on his. Emma froze. Her eyes widened. The color left her face, leaving her ashen. In the photograph, the tattoo was on the left hip. Eric's tattoo was on his right. She then crumpled to the floor of the shower, letting the water cascade over her. She started to sob in regretful sorrow, the tears flowing. "Oh, you stupid, stupid fool," she whimpered. "How could you have been so dumb?" She castigated herself as she fought to control her tears. Emma was seated at her desk later that day, her mind obviously not on her work, when Mark Sutton walked into her office. Her eyes narrowed just a bit as she watched his face light up with a smile. "Hi, Emma. I just wanted to stop by and see how you were doing. I really hated being the messenger of such crappy news. You know that? I hope that you got to the bottom of the problem," he asked smoothly. "Thanks, Mark," Emma replied evenly. "I see you have another envelope under your arm. Is that the picture you showed me? I really need it, Mark. If I'm to go ahead with my plans, I really need that photograph." Mark's eyes lit up as he heard Emma's words. His mind quickly assumed that her next steps would be the divorce court, and he was prepared. "Yeah, Emma," he replied. "The one I showed you and a couple of others are in here. They will tell you all you need to know. No words are needed." He then placed the large tan envelope on her desk. "Look, Emma," he continued in a low and conspiratorial tone. "I know that this is difficult for you, and I really can sympathize. It's really rotten when someone you love plays around on you. I want you to know that you can count on me for anything. Understand? Anything at all." "Okay." Emma smiled, but Mark didn't notice that the smile did not reach her eyes. She nodded. "Thanks, Mark. I do appreciate it. You've been a good guy, and I won't forget what you've done. Believe me, I won't forget." The day passed slowly for Emma, the hours dragging by. Strong emotions again racked her, but she managed to control them while trying to come up with some kind of plan. She felt rage consume her at times, perspiration flowing down between her breasts and down her back. Finally realizing that she wouldn't be able to get anything done, she gave an excuse and left work early. Arriving home, Emma mounted the stairs and quickly shed her clothing in the bedroom. She felt sticky from perspiration and was far from sure that her deodorant was still working. She entered the shower and let the hot water relax her tense muscles. Soaping herself and rinsing, she started to feel a bit more human, although still filled with rage over what was being done to her marriage, and bitter recrimination over how she had treated her husband. Drying herself, Emma entered the bedroom again, then paused, listening. She was sure that she had heard the front door open and close. Quickly donning a robe, she opened Eric's closet door and extracted a 6-iron from the golf bag nestled in the corner. Emma silently crept down the stairs, a bit frightened, not knowing what to expect. From near the foot of the staircase, she saw a figure in the living room. She almost turned to run up the stairs to a phone when she realized that the figure was Eric. For a long moment, they stood gaping at each other. Then Emma, with a sob caught in her throat, ran and flung herself at her husband, clasping him around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. "Oh, Eric, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please, Eric, I've been such a damn stupid fool. I know that I don't deserve you. You've got to forgive me. Eric, please. I'm begging you." Her words were running together, becoming unintelligible. Eric just stood there, totally flummoxed, this being a reception for which he was totally unprepared. He had expected a cold and bitter Emma, not this broken woman begging for his forgiveness. Taking her arms in his hands, he attempted to pull her away from him just a bit when she planted her lips on his and kissed him desperately, not realizing that she still held the 6-iron, the head of which was tapping into Eric's skull. "Geez, Emma," he gasped as he came up for air. "My head. Geez. Put the damn club down." Emma, realizing that she was still grasping the golf club, turned red and flung the 6-iron from her. "Emma, geez. Careful. Those irons cost me a fortune," complained Eric. They then stood and looked at each other, beginning to recognize the total absurdity, the idiotic incongruity, of the whole situation. Emma then, despite her fears, giggled. She quickly put a hand over her mouth in horror, apprehension in her eyes. Eric blinked again, tried to suppress a grin, failed, and let a chuckle escape him. It wasn't long before they were both holding each other, howling with laughter. Wiping tears from his eyes, Eric then held Emma to him and, his voice low, murmured softly, "Honey, we have to talk. We really have to talk." "I know, sweetheart. I know," Emma answered dreamily. "I know that that's important. But something is even more important now." Emma then shook the robe from her shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. She stood there, nude, and slowly sank to her knees. She reached up to his fly and attempted to lower his zipper. Grasping her hand, Eric just shook his head. "Please, Eric, I want to do this. I really need to do this. Plus, for some odd reason, I'm excited as hell. Don't stop me." Eric slowly released his hold, and she then unfastened his trousers and lowered them, along with his shorts, to the floor. Emma moved closer to him. She gently removed his clothing and stepped into his embrace. She felt the warmth of his body against hers, their connection deepening with each passing moment. Kissing him softly, they shared a passionate embrace, their movements slow and deliberate as they finished together in harmony. Afterward, she lay beside him, feeling his arms wrap around her in a comforting embrace. After a while, Emma rose to her feet, pulling Eric along with her. "Let's go, honey. Let's go upstairs to our bedroom. I said that I would spend the rest of my life proving my love for you, and that begins tonight." Eric smiled down at her, and hand in hand, they ascended the stairs. The early morning sun, creeping past the window blinds, woke Emma. She stretched and gazed lovingly at her husband lying beside her. Her eyes teared momentarily, recognizing how close she had come to losing him because of her stupid temper. Quietly, she got out of bed and moved to the bathroom, where she peed and then took a quick shower. Drying herself, she had a thought, grinned, and tossed the towel aside. She tiptoed quietly back to the bed and gently lowered herself, scooting next to Eric. Emma examined his strong, naked body and felt herself getting excited. Keeping her eyes on Eric, who continued to sleep in blissful unawareness, she gave him a BJ. Emma saw Eric move restlessly. She smiled with her eyes as he finally awoke and saw his wife. He said softly, "Again? Damn, Emma. I'll give you 2 hours to stop that," he muttered. Emma continued. Once done, Emma giggled and moved up the bed. She gently moved across him and settled herself beside his head. He looked up and saw her. Her expression was gentle, and her presence was calming. Emma leaned in and felt his support as they connected more deeply. The emotions grew intense, but in a way that felt comforting and genuine. They shared a peaceful silence after their moment, enjoying the stillness before gently moving back into the world around them. "Look, Eric, the tattoo is on the wrong hip. That's what finally awakened me and made me realize what a fool I've been," Emma said ruefully. Eric shook his head. "Stop beating yourself up, Emma. As we said, we're moving on. And now we're going to get to the bottom of this." He sat back with a puzzled frown on his face. Now, why would Sutton do this? What reason would he have? Eric mused. Emma thought for a moment, then said, "Didn't he get really pissed when you got the Henderson account? You told me that he was mad enough to spit nails." "Yeah, but would he do something like this for revenge? It just seems so over the top, even for Sutton." Eric shook his head again. "It just seems so strange." Emma picked up one of the photos again. "Eric," she said, and the intensity in her voice was obvious. "Take a look at this. The woman in the photo, look at her ankle. That scar." Eric looked at the photo held by Emma. He saw the small half-moon scar and looked at Emma with a puzzled expression. "Doesn't register, honey. What about it?" "Son of a bitch," Emma grated. "I know who that whore is. It's Nina Romano. I swear, I'll kill her." She looked up at her husband, fire in her eyes. "I know it's her, Eric. I'm sure of it." Eric sat back, a puzzled expression on his face. "But why, Emma? Why would she do a rotten thing like this? I barely know her. What does she have against me?" Emma laughed bitterly. "It's not you, honey. It's me. That stupid bitch thinks that I'm the one who blabbed about an affair she was having, which almost caused her husband to divorce her. I still don't know why he didn't. I denied it, but she didn't believe me, so I told her to go screw herself. This is her way to get back at me, and that idiot Mark Sutton went along with her." Emma's eyes suddenly widened, and she jumped to her feet. "Eric, guess what? We have the proof that she's screwing around again. It's right there in the photographs. The stupid morons never even realized that they hung themselves by taking those pictures. The tattoo is fake and we can prove that. And the scar on her ankle gives her away. Eric just sat there, thinking. Wait, Emma. He held up his hand. You're going off half-cocked again. We don't have proof. We really don't have squat. What we have is totally circumstantial. Wait a second. Let me think. Emma started to override his objections but thought better of it and reseated herself. Emma continued to sit and fidget while Eric sat wrapped in thought. She finally rose and told Eric that she would refill their coffee mugs, and Eric nodded absently. When Emma returned with fresh coffee, she saw Eric sitting there with a small smile on his face. Okay, honey, he said. I think I have the beginning of an idea, but a lot of parts have to come together. It gets a little complicated. Just listen. I'm now just flying by the seat of my pants. Eric paused, collecting his thoughts. You know Ethan Morris, one of the guys I golf with? It was a statement more than a question, and Emma nodded. Well, a few weeks ago, we were sitting around with a couple of beers after the 18th hole. The other two, Sutton and Hunter, had already left. Ethan was bitching about the Grandview, his small boutique hotel in downtown Los Angeles. It really hasn't been doing well, and his two partners wanted to turn it into a very private and exclusive brothel. One of the partners, Alex Carter, ran an illegal brothel in Las Vegas, but was busted and had to get out of town. He told Ethan that he has the experience and that they could make a fortune. The other partner loves the idea, but Ethan sure doesn't. Emma was getting impatient. Eric, what does that have to do with anything? Hold your horses, kid. I'm getting to that. Ethan wants nothing to do with that, and he would love to buy them out, but they won't sell. So he kind of divorced himself from the hotel's operation. He just became an investor. He doesn't want anything to do with the day-by-day functions. Now, here's what I have in mind. And Eric explained to Emma just what he had in mind. The next evening, Eric Caldwell and Ethan Morris were seated in a small downtown LA lounge, sipping their drinks. Ethan was looking at Eric quizzically, a small smile on his face. Okay, Eric, thanks for the drink. Now tell me why I'm here. I'm sure that it's something nefarious. He laughed. Ethan, I need your help. And after I tell you what I want you to do, I'll try to explain my reasons and how this will help you also. Remember Sutton mentioning that he was banging some broad? Ethan nodded. Yeah, Eric, he's always banging some broad. So what? Well, what I want you to do is tell him about the little boutique brothel and offer to let him use a room there anytime he wants. You know Sutton, he's cheap as dirt. He'll jump at the chance to get a nice room in a nice place for nothing. Ethan sat there frowning. I can do that, Eric, but you had better tell me what's going on. You figuring on getting my butt burnt? You know better than that, Ethan. Eric chuckled. Here's why I want you to do this. And he related what Sutton and Nina Romano had done and were doing to him and to Emma. Ethan sat there, amazement on his face. I can't believe that. I mean, I can. But that's got to be the most rotten thing I've heard in a hell of a long time. That prick. I never did like him. Eric, I'm more than happy to help you. Even though I'm not involved in the place's operation anymore, I can surely get a room anytime I want. Now, tell me why you want this. Eric explained just what he had in mind. The following evening, Eric Caldwell strode purposefully up the walk to his brother's house. He had called and was reassured when Matthew told him to come ahead. But that Sophie was out. It was her bridge night. Eric didn't have to knock. Matthew had the front door open by the time he reached it. They hugged briefly and moved into the living room. Eric sank into the sofa gratefully, trying to relax. He was obviously stiff with tension, and his shoulders and neck ached. Matthew looked at his brother with a worried expression. Okay, Eric, tell me what's going on. It looks like you're ready to explode. Have things gotten that much worse with you and Emma? Eric shook his head firmly. No, Matthew. We're okay. Really. We're fine now. But I have a story that I'd like to tell you. Matthew sat there and listened, at first with astonishment, then with a burning anger at how his brother's marriage had almost been derailed. Matthew didn't say anything for a few moments when Eric had finished his tale. He had to pause a bit, obviously trying to control his temper. He swallowed and then looked at Eric. Look, Eric, I can just imagine how you feel, but don't do anything rash. The important thing in all of this is that you and Emma have seen through this despicable charade and have reunited. That's the bottom line, Eric. That's the important thing. Matthew concluded intently, trying to forestall any precipitous action by his younger brother. Eric smiled slightly and reassured him. Don't sweat it, Matthew. I'm not going to go out and shoot the scumsucker, though I sure feel like it. Also, I'm not going to do anything that will get me into any trouble, but I am going to try to burn Sutton's ass. He's going to learn that crap like he's pulled has its consequences. Eric paused and then explained to Matthew how he could help him bring down both Sutton and Nina Romano. Matthew sat with his mouth agape as Eric finished outlining his plan. Then he chuckled quietly and shook his head. Remind me not to get you pissed off at me, bro. He then sat back and let the laughter come. Count me in. Just let me know a couple of days in advance, and we'll be ready to go. Eric waited patiently, contacting Ethan Morris from time to time, gathering information. He kept his brother Matthew in the loop. It wasn't long before the call came. Ethan Morris called him on a Thursday evening. Eric, tomorrow's the day. I gave Sutton a key card for room 418. He told me he would be there tomorrow evening around 8 p.m. It seems like her hubby is out of town. I didn't ask any questions. Just smiled like a good guy. Eric smiled, just a bit of satisfaction in the facial gesture. Thanks, Ethan. I do appreciate your help. No problem, Eric. The scumsucker deserves everything he's going to get. And what's even better, I'll benefit also. The place will be closed down, and I'm sure that I can buy those goons out. Then I should be thanking you. Look, Eric, I've got to go now. I expect to read all about it in the paper. And he chuckled as he broke the connection. Eric quickly redialed Matthew. It's me. It's on for tomorrow. Sutton and his hooker will be there tomorrow at 8 p.m., room 418. I guess the best time would be around 8:30 or so. Give them time to really get into it. Matthew grunted in satisfaction. Perfect. That's when we'll do it. I've already primed a distinguished member of the press who's just waiting for my call. He's salivating over this story. It'll probably make the front page. Matthew paused and then continued. Eric, I think it's best that you be nowhere near that place tomorrow. Take Emma somewhere. Go away for the day. Make yourself scarce. Eric chuckled a bit in satisfaction as he read the local section of the Saturday morning paper. Emma, look at this, he said and held up the newspaper. In bold print, right under the fold, was this headline. Local brothel busted, here's the first sentence. Honey. Police raid downtown brothel, taking both clients and workers into custody. He chuckled again. Pictures on page 6, he continued. Holy shit, how about this? He exclaimed. Mark Sutton tried to escape out the back via a fire exit. He fell and broke both legs. Son of a bitch. Well, he deserves what he's going to get. They forgot the moral clause in their contracts. They'll both be out of a job by Monday. Oh my God, Emma. Here's a picture of Nina Romano being let out by a cop. Her ass is toast when her husband sees that. Emma smiled briefly but felt no satisfaction. She felt soiled by the whole sordid mess. And she still felt mortified at how she had lost control of herself and lost faith in her husband. She vowed to herself to find help, to see someone, to enroll in an anger management program. I know how you feel, honey. They do deserve it. But I would really like to just forget it all now and just get on with our lives. Yes, Eric, she murmured. It's just a shame that so many people had to suffer because of their jealousy. But I learned a valuable lesson. Emma continued as she moved to his side. I learned the hard way, to have faith in my husband and to love him with all my heart. And with that, she settled against him and felt comforted when she felt his arms enfold her.